Good evening, greetings and salutations. This is Fragments of Memory, aka your friendly neighborhood armchair philosopher. A lot of us talk about the black community. The black community needs to unify. The black community is done. Get out of the black community, etc., etc. But I've been listening to one, Mumia Obsidian Ali. I make no apologies for listening to the gentleman. I don't agree with everything he says, but there's some things he says that are very spot on. One of them being Mr. Obsidian often discusses this particular book by the name of Disintegration, the Splintering of Black America by one Eugene Robinson. He's a columnist. And when he discusses black issues, i.e. Mr. Obsidian, in the so-called black community, he talks about this. And Mr. Obsidian asserts that the civil rights movements worked. They served their purposes, but not everyone benefited equally from the efforts of the civil rights movement. YouTubers such as Simone56 and Ulysses One and several other YouTubers always say that the black community is done, that Rome is burning, and that we need to escape Blackistan. Now, according to Mr. Robinson and to some extent Obsidian, Black America was splintered into four groups, according to, like I said, both Robinson and Obsidian. YouTubers such as Black Privilege have also even discussed this. He's touched upon this in his videos. One of the groups were known as the Transcendent. So Eugene Robinson asserts, and even Obsidian sort of co-signs this view, that the civil rights movement worked, but here's the fallback. We're feeling the fallout and the kickback of it, the blowback and the results. As you know, from a philosophical perspective, just from a philosophical perspective, when you do one thing, there's a cause and there's effect. The universe is full of cause and effect. You do something, and then there's a result of you doing something. There's even a result of inaction. So what happens is that not only do we get one set of effects from the cause, we get a whole bunch of other effects, or unintended effects, if you will. You've heard of that, unintended causes or unintended effects, meaning these are the unintended consequences of what happened with the civil rights movement, which I can kind of see where he's going with this, or I can see where he's going with this. But the four classes of African Americans or black people, the four black communities, if you will, there's the abandoned poor. You know who they are. They're the people that are struggling, super struggling. I'm talking, this is what Blackistan is full of, is the abandoned poor. And then of course you have another class called the emergent. This would be the immigrants that come over mostly from maybe African nations, or these are the mixed race children, i.e. these are the products of interracial marriages, unions, and of course, dare I say it, the dirty word, swirling. Anyway, never mind. But anyway, then of course you have the mainstream middle class. Then you have, and the mainstream middle class, of course, they're just the mainstream. And then you have the small but powerful elite group, the very wealthy, affluent, upper echelon blacks. They are the transcendent. So when you talk about Blackistan, you're really talking about the abandoned poor. And of course, as we can attest to, the black experience is no longer a monolith. I'll even use myself as an example. My mother worked for corporate America. She worked for Purina. And my father, though a mechanic, we were not living in squalor. My sister and I growing up were not living in squalor. We had no idea that, there were people living in squalor. We may have visited, now being from St. Louis, I lived in St. Louis County. I grew up in University City. And University City had more of a multicultural flavor to it. Now there were parts of U City that were a little bit on the struggling side, but generally speaking, I and my sister never felt the struggle, you know what I mean? Where other people did. Now this isn't to brag or to boast, this is just to say, I can see where he's coming from. So we would have been more lower middle class than straight up poor. But again, that Blackistan that you all talk about is full of the abandoned. Now, and again, I'm checking my notes. I like to make notes to try to have a cohesive argument here. But basically, we are one big yet fragmented tapestry. So I would then agree with both Simone56 and Ulysses One that one should leave Blackistan. Blackistan is filled, like I say, with the abandoned. I think both women have failed to see the nuances or at least articulate them well enough. But in spirit, the message is clear. Get away from the abandoned and don't find yourself numbered amongst them. Don't find yourself numbered amongst the abandoned poor. Do all in your power to not be one of them. That is the message that they reach out. And I sort of see it, because with poverty does come dysfunction. With poverty does come desperation. With poverty, people are more likely to get into crime. People are more likely to have children out of wedlock, according to statistics. And of course, there are exceptions, but of course, the exception does not negate the rule. It merely just doesn't. So the question isn't to escape the so-called black community, but which black community are you trying to escape from, and which black community are you trying to escape to? Because that is how Eugene Robinson sets it up. So for me, that has been, now I have not yet read the book, but I have read an NPR article on it. The article came out in 2010, so that's 7 years ago. So 7 years ago, he was discussing this phenomena. And I'm not sure the publishing date of the book, but it seems like from what Obsidian has said, and even from what I've read about the book, is very poignant, and it explains a lot of things I've noticed, even in real life and the dynamics playing out on YouTube. Like, you have someone like a Sergeant Willie P, who is definitely not part of the abandoned poor. And then you have someone like a Styles, who grew up where he had to hustle and be in the streets. So it's very interesting to see these two different dynamics, these two different perspectives play out, so I think there's something to this Eugene Robinson's book. And Eugene Robinson asserts that, as well as Obsidian especially, he's asserted that many of the black movements have sent a shockwave through black America. And I like to think of it as the butterfly effect, where the butterfly flaps its wings in Singapore and causes a tornado or a hurricane in Jamaica, all because it's that ripple effect. So remember the movie Butterfly Effect? It starred Ashton Kutcher, and he found a way where he could time travel to certain points in his life by using these journals. And what he would do is he would do something to change what happened to him. And what ended up happening was, not only would he change the incident, it would send this sort of ripple effect, this sort of butterfly effect through time. So it created a new reality for him. So I think that's what sort of happened to us, is that the civil rights movements, the protesting, all of that back in the 60s and the 50s and the 60s, and even before then, all of that had a ripple effect. So we are affected by that. Change one thing, change everything. I mean, that's something that he brought to mind that makes me sort of have a paradigm shift. Because even though I know that the black experience is mosaic and multitudinous and not just this one size fits all, I, in my mind, have still seen the black community as a monolithic group, when in reality, no. There are there are 4 different black communities, according to Mr. Robinson. Now, I'm going to check the book out sometime in the future, and when I do, and when I read it, and when I highlight in the parts and take my notes and do my due diligence and research it, I'm definitely going to do a follow-up video. But for right now, I just wanted to just throw that out there. Like, everyone that says, "Oh, get out of Blackistan," and usually Blackistan implies struggle, even the word struggle, love, and all of this. So that's a very interesting perspective. Obsidian, I just want to point that out. And Mr. Robinson, Mr. Eugene Robinson. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the 4 different black Americas, and how, though we all share the same skin, we don't share the same experience, i.e. what Zora Neale Hurston once said, "My skin folk ain't always my kinfolk." Well, tell me what you think. Give me a response video. Give me some commentary in the comments. They are always welcomed. Take care, have a beautiful day, and be easy like Sunday morning.